Most men think a glass jaw is a physical trait. They think it's a structural weakness in your chin, a genetic roll of the dice that means you can't take a solid hit. But they're completely wrong. A glass jaw isn't located on your face. It's a flaw in your judgment. It's the exact moment you start buying into your own hype, thinking your talent means the basic rules don't apply to you anymore. Let me tell you what that actually looks like from the inside. It doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't announce itself. It seeps in slowly, like water getting underneath a floorboard. One day you're grinding, hungry, grateful for every rep. The next, you're walking into a gym 30 minutes late and telling yourself that champions don't need to explain their schedule. That's the glass jaw forming, not in your chin, in your character. I stood 6'5", possessed an undefeated amateur run, fast hands, and a colorful lifestyle to match. I genuinely believed I was bulletproof. And that precise belief is what made me fragile. When you are 19 and putting people to sleep on the canvas, the room fills with people wanting to trade on your future. Everyone wants a seat at the table when they think you're the one cooking the meal. I remember the first time I truly felt it, that intoxicating sense of invincibility. It was after my 7th amateur win. I walked out of that gym, and the street felt different. The air felt different. I was moving through the world like I had some invisible armor on. Like consequence was something that happened to other people. Lesser people. People who hadn't put in what I put in. That feeling is the most dangerous drug a young man can find. Because it doesn't feel like poison. It feels like power. Naomi was different. She was a grueling nursing student, working late shifts to stay afloat. She didn't care about the shallow applause or the plastic trophies. She loved me when I was running miles in split-open sneakers, before the money, before the attention, before I started confusing noise for substance. She'd wake up at 5 in the morning to leave a plate of food on the counter for when I got back from road work. She never asked for recognition. She just showed up. Every single time. She was my anchor. But the fatal trap for an arrogant man is that when he becomes desperate to drift, he starts viewing the anchor keeping him safe as a burden. He starts calling stability boring. He starts calling loyalty suffocating. He rewrites the story of the people who love him until they become the villains, because that's easier than admitting he's the one who's changing. Immediately following my professional debut win, 2 completely different doors swung open. Coach Jackson mapped out the slow, rigorous path. 3 solid years of grinding local bouts, brutal conditioning, and systematically forging a man capable of holding a title. He talked about building the kind of foundation that doesn't crack under pressure. He talked about patience as a weapon. He'd been in this game for 30 years. He'd seen 100 versions of me walk through his gym doors, and he'd seen most of them burn out before they ever got to the main event. He offered me hard discipline. He offered me the thing I needed most and wanted least. Then came Vic Salerno. He smelled my vanity from a mile away. Men like Vic are predators, but not the kind that hide in the dark. They stand right in the light, smiling, hand extended, wearing a watch that costs more than your mother's rent. He put down an immediate 5-figure cash bonus and a fast-tracked television slot. He talked about exposure. He talked about legacy. He talked about how the old way was for fighters who didn't have my gifts. Coach looked at me and said, "Fast money makes for a slow fighter." He said it quietly. No drama, no lecture. Just those 8 words. And then he walked back to his desk and let me make my own decision. I called him old-fashioned, turned my back, and signed with Vic. I wanted the shine. I told myself I'd earned it. I told myself that Coach was just afraid of how far I could go. I walked home with a pocket full of Vic's cash, feeling like a provider. My 14-year-old brother Theo was wide awake, waiting up for me. He had school in 6 hours, but he couldn't sleep because he needed to see how the night had gone. He looked at me like I was a god who had cracked the code. His eyes were full of something I mistook for admiration. Looking back now, I understand what it actually was. It was trust. Complete, unconditional, dangerous trust. The kind a younger sibling places in an older one when they believe that person knows the way. He started replicating everything. My voice, my dismissive attitude toward our mother, my lack of effort in the classroom, my belief that the rules were written for people without talent. I convinced myself I was paving a wealthy path for him. I didn't realize I was manually teaching my little brother how to construct his own absolute ruin. I was handing him a blueprint and calling it a gift. The moment that first big check cleared, my priorities shifted out of alignment. I missed a Monday morning road work block, then a Tuesday sparring session. I told myself a champion knows how to rest, that the body needs recovery, that I was being smart about my preparation. Every excuse was technically true. None of them were honest. When I finally strolled in at noon on Wednesday, Coach Jackson didn't yell. He didn't pace. He didn't throw anything across the room. He just looked at my new designer watch, looked at my colorful sleeves, looked at the ease in my walk, and said, "You aren't busy, son. You're just making choices. Just make damn sure you can pay for them when the invoice arrives." Then he turned around and went back to work. I didn't understand what he meant, or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to. There's a difference between not knowing something and refusing to look at it. I was doing the second thing and calling it the first. Naomi noticed next. She always noticed. That was one of her gifts. She could read a room, read a person, read the space between what someone said and what they actually meant. I stopped calling. I stopped showing up for dinner. When she quietly asked where I was, I gave her the same lie I gave the gym. I'm busy. I told myself she just couldn't comprehend the immense pressure of being great. I told myself she was needy. I told myself that a woman who truly supported me would understand without needing an explanation. Every one of those thoughts was a lie I constructed to protect myself from the truth, which was this. I was choosing other things over her, repeatedly, deliberately, and she deserved better than what I was becoming. She didn't leave dramatically. There was no screaming, no ultimatum. She just stopped being there one day, the way a light goes out when the bulb finally burns through. I came home, and her things were gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter, next to the spot where she used to leave my food. It said, "I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do." That was it. No anger, just grief. And somehow that was worse than any argument we could have had. The next night, I stepped between those ropes, smelling like expensive cologne and absolute arrogance. I looked out into the front row for my peace, for that one familiar face that had always steadied me before the bell. But Naomi's seat was a ghost town. Empty. Just a folded program on the chair and a cup of water nobody was going to drink. I turned to my corner for guidance. Coach Jackson was there. But he wasn't looking at a student. He wasn't looking at a fighter he believed in. He was looking at a complete stranger who had borrowed a talented man's body and forgotten to bring the work ethic along with it. The bell chimed, and within the next 3 minutes, I was was about to discover exactly how fast everything shatters when your entire foundation is made of glass. Here's what they don't tell you about hitting the canvas. They don't tell you about the silence. The fight goes on around you. You can hear it, muffled, like sound traveling through water. But inside your own head, it is completely quiet. And in that quiet, everything you've been running from catches up to you at once. Coach's words, Mandy's look, Theo's eyes, the road work you skipped, the Tuesday you threw away, the Monday that started it all. You don't lose in the rain. You lose in the decisions you made long before you ever climbed through those roots. You know it's just going to go to the rebuilds. I rebuilt, slowly, without the shortcuts, and without the applause. I went back to running miles before the sun came up. I went back to the gym at 6 in the morning. Coach Johnson was the ball easy. He made it easy. Every session, every round. He never said it was dangerous. He didn't want to. He never said it was finished. He reached out to me. She was kind. She was gracious. And some door I was still closed. That's not a punishment. That's just the honest cost of who you chose to be. I sat down with him. I told him the truth. I told him that everything I've shown him to do. I told him that discipline isn't a punishment. It's protection. And the people who love me will tell me the hard things. Every young man up at night is that it feels like strength while you're building it. It feels like freedom. It feels like you finally stop letting other people's limitations define your ceiling. But it isn't strength. It's the slow erosion of everything that was actually holding you up. The question isn't whether life will test your jaw. It will. The question is what you built it out of before the bell rang.